we'll just give everyone a second to filter in. Awesome. Look at you all dropping in. Thank you so much for being here. If you haven't met me before, I'm Sandy Lowe, Bold Strokes Books Senior Editor, and we have a lovely panel of authors tonight. We have C.A. Popovich, Susie Clark, Ann Shade, Aurora Ray, Kris Bryant, and Anna Hartnett Reichardt. Thank you so much for being here, guys. Our panel topic tonight is on trust, trusting you. If you've been joining us earlier in the week, we have been following the romance arc with our topics. So we started with the meeting, right? Meeting you, and then getting to know you. And then last night we had some kissing. So tonight is all about trust. Alrighty, I have an opening question for our panel. And that is, who do you trust the most in your life and why? Let's start with Susie.
Oh, I knew I would be first. I have to tell this, and it's going to probably be very telling about me, but I trust myself the most. As you get older, you really learn. When you're old, you really learn yourself. You learn about yourself. And I do trust myself really well. I have to take responsibility when I get into trouble. It's all me. I can't blame anybody else, but I do trust myself. I've learned to be able to trust myself. I didn't always do that, but I trust myself.
Awesome. I love that answer. How about you, CA?
I think I'd have to say probably my sister. She's just the most honest, straightforward person that you'd ever want to meet. And she's my sister, so I trust her.
I love it. Ann, how about you? Who do you trust? Ann Shade.
I think she's frozen.
Oh, I think she's frozen. Okay, let's go to Anna Reichardt since we're with the A's.
All right, let's do it. I would have to say my wife. I mean, I think anyone who's been married for a length of time knows that, man, they see you like in your ugliest, most like vulnerable situations. So it takes a lot to love me through all that. So I've got some big trust in her for sure.
And I love that you're like, when you've been married for so long, even though I'm like 25.
Call me a true lesbian, but I think I was 24 when we got married. So I'm almost at a 7-year anniversary over here.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations.
I know. Hey, I see you, Kris.
Aurora, how about you? Who do you trust the most?
I really like Susie's answer, and I think I'm gonna claim it as my own, although I will own to being a work in progress.
I like that. Ann, how about you? Who do you trust the most?
I would have to say my spouse, who's been my best friend for over 30 years. I sometimes probably trust him more than I trust myself. But I think because he knows me best and he's been more accepting of me than pretty much anybody in my family. So I trust him the most.
Oh, that's lovely. And Kris, how about you? Who do you trust the most?
I trust my sister the most. She's my best friend. We've been through a lot in this lifetime. We were a military family. We traveled all over the world. And so we had to rely on each other for entertainment and just, have somebody that you are with all the time that you just trust. And even now, she lives right down the street from me. I mean, after living everywhere, we ended up being real close physically, just right down the street. I can walk to her house. I just love her. We just have such a great time. And I trust her with everything. She knows more of my secrets than anybody else does.
Ooh.
I don't have secrets. I mean,
if you want to know Kris Bryant's secrets,
just check Twitter.
Yeah, seriously. All righty. So this is a reading panel. Our authors will be reading Scenes of Trust tonight. Very deep panel tonight. I'm excited. We are going to start with C.A. Popovich. If everyone else could mute and stop video, that would be amazing. And CA, your book is The Kiss, which I know, there it is. And we didn't want to, give away The Kiss, so we didn't put you on last night's panel, but we've saved it for tonight. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the book, and you can start reading whenever you're ready.
Okay. Well, Kate Willis has a 3-year-old daughter, and she has escaped an extremely abusive situation with her wife from Ohio and moved to Michigan to live with her sister. And about 6 months after she moved there, she went on a hike to a state park with a lesbian meetup group, and that's where she met Leslie. So they spent the afternoon just, together exploring, and really felt a connection. And they had this phenomenal kiss, and then Kate left. So about 6 months after that, Kate she's scared. She's worried about this ex-wife soon to be ex-wife, coming to find her. But things have sort of quieted down. So she participates in a speed dating event. It's a fundraiser for the local lesbian gay center, and Leslie's there. So she and Leslie decide they will have a date. And Leslie just wants to know what happened to Kate, why she left, and she never heard from her again. So before their official date, they decide they're just going to meet for coffee at a bistro. So that's where I begin here. As Kate drove to the bistro, she considered how much she would say to Leslie. She had to tell her the truth. But did she need to know how long she'd put up with Wendy's abuse and nastiness? Wendy is her soon-to-be ex-wife. Did she need every sordid detail? She swallowed her embarrassment, took a deep breath, and entered the bistro. Leslie stood and reached for her hand as Katie approached the 2-seater table. "Can I buy you a cup of coffee?" Leslie asked. "Is this going to be a regular thing?" "It can be our first," Leslie grinned. "But I do want to hear why you left the way you did. I was pretty confused. Did I do something wrong?" Kate heard the underlying worry in Leslie's voice. "I'm sorry. The day we met, when we took that hike, I told you I lived in Ohio. 6 months earlier, I had to leave the place I was living in because my ex-wife had become violent. That hike was the first time I'd been around anyone other than my family, and the connection I felt with you was amazing, as well as terrifying. I'd been in a bad situation, and I wasn't ready to feel something for anyone else yet." Leslie watched her as she spoke, her gaze never wavering. "I get it, and I'm sorry you went through that. Thank you for explaining. I'm glad you agreed to meet me tonight," Leslie said. "I worried you'd never see you again." "I'm not sure it's a good idea you do." Kate hesitated, but decided the truth was best. "Wendy is off the rails, and she's done some terrible things. She sees rivals for me everywhere. Once I went to a preschool to talk to some teachers for Portia, and Wendy threatened them, insisting I was having an affair with one of them." She bit her lip and shoved her hands in her pockets to keep them from shaking. "I started dating someone about 6 months after we first split up, and she put the woman in the hospital." Leslie flinched. "Has she ever hurt you?" "Not physically, not yet. And I don't believe she'd ever hurt Portia, but she yells and swears, which scares her." She glanced at Leslie, then down. "You see why I ran that day. My life is complicated. Put my phone number in your phone. You call me if you need help, but call 911 if she threatens you." Kate put Leslie's number in her phone. "I'll give you mine too, but I may change it again if I think there's a chance Wendy has it." Kate gave Leslie her number and checked the area around them out of habit. "You still want to have that date we agreed to?" Leslie asked. Kate knew what she had to say. She knew it was a bad idea. Absolutely. So I kind of think that's the beginning of their trust in each other. And so trusting.
Awesome. I love that. Lots going on there in that scene. And I think gives readers a little taste of what might be to come and what the characters have to overcome in order to be together. Awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Next
you.
up, we have Anna Hartnett Reichardt.
Hey.
Hello.
Hello.
Anna, you're reading from Changing Majors, which is your debut novel. Super exciting.
Thank you.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about it and then start reading?
Yeah, so I'll be reading from Changing Majors. The scene I'm reading is Bailey, the main character, is studying in the basement of their dorm with her best friend Luke. He is tutoring her in calculus because calculus is evil, obviously. And she's having a hard time, and Noelle, her sweet mate and love interest, comes and steals her away. And neither of them are out yet, and this is a pretty pivotal scene where they're not broaching the subject quite yet, but they're like admitting more things to each other and building that trust. So here we go. Come on, Bales. I know you can do this. It's just like the last one we did. Try one more time, then we can do it together. I sigh and erase my previous proof with a smudge from my palm. I stare hard at the derivative for a minute or two and scribble down my next best guess. Luke grimaces. Oops. Shit, I'm gonna fail this test, I say. I can't help but frown at the whiteboard. I don't belong here with them. Don't have the grades, don't have the drive. Okay, Luke, I'm stealing her. She needs a break. Noelle comes up behind me and tugs at the sleeve of my sweatshirt. Come grab a coffee with me, she says. Her hand trails down the remainder of my arm, and she interlaces her fingers with mine, pulling me away from the evil derivatives. Once outside in the cool night air, she squeezes my hand, sending a shiver down my spine. What's wrong, Bales? A lot. A lot feels wrong. Sorry, calculus is just really frustrating, and I'm pretty convinced I'm going to fail this test on Thursday. I'll look at my shoes as we walk across the quad to the campus Starbucks. Calculus is notoriously terrible, like for everyone. Besides, being good at calculus or not is so irrelevant in the scheme of things. We pause to buy coffee and walk back out into the night, warm cups in hand. It's not all about calculus. I just feel like a little lost in general. Y'all have these big dreams, you know what you want, and Noelle stops walking and pulls me around to face her. You think I know what I want? I'm sorry, She takes a step towards me and cuts me off again. I mean, yeah, I know I want to be a doctor, but so what? There are so many other things to figure out. She pulls me to a nearby bench. I struggle to respond, burn my mouth on my steaming hot coffee instead. Do you think if someone knew everything about you, I mean, every terrible little thing, that anyone could actually love one another? Like, what if you knew everything? She asks. She taps the plastic lid on her coffee. I wish I could know everything about you, I say, shocked at how quickly those words crawled out of my throat. Being alone with her is the closest I've ever felt to being whole, but she doesn't need to know that quite yet. No, you don't. Trust me, she says. I stare at her, and for the first time, she breaks the connection first. Aren't we just the physical manifestation of all those terrible little things, and all the great things too? So when I look at you, I see my favorite person. I see the sum of everything you are, I say. She grins. You just casually use some in a sentence. Luke must be a good tutor, a miracle worker, hopefully. She studies my face and reaches out a hand. Her thumb brushes over my scar, the contact making my body hum. What happened here? She asks. I swallow. Pick up basketball, remember? The lie feels tired and lazy at this point. I try not to close my eyes and lean into her touch. She smooths my brow one more time before she drops her hand to rest between us on the bench, next to mine. What really happened? She asks. It was a dumb accident. It was my fault. I don't know I'm going to tell her until the words are already out. It's okay, she says. She squeezes my knee, then returns her hand to the bench. I can feel it there. It's me, Bales. Just you and me. I bite my lip. When I was 12, me and my friends met for burgers near Forsyth Park. He was supposed to pick me up, my stepdad, John. Everyone had gotten a ride already, and it was getting dark. He wasn't answering his phone, so I knew he was somewhere, getting drunk, and forgot about me. He struggled with that. Always had this cloud over him, and I think it was just a little too heavy. Anyway, I started walking home. It was about an hour's walk, but I got spooked by some noise in an alley and started running. I looked over my shoulder to make sure no one was following me, and when I turned around, I clipped my face on the side of a bus line. Jesus, Bailey, Noel says. He asked me to say I got the stitches from a pickup game of basketball, which, kind of benefited both of us. It's a weird thing to have given the scar to myself while he held the true blame. So I agreed. I lied to the doctor, to my brother, even to my mom. I only told her what really happened last year. And when she found out, she finally left him. After all we'd been through with the guy, me telling the truth is all it took. Noel stares at me, making me wish I'd stuck with the basketball story. It wasn't your fault. He abandoned you in the city when you were 12. He's the one that scarred you. I don't know. I should have been paying attention to where I was running. It's so dumb. He should have picked up his 12-year-old daughter from downtown Savannah so she didn't have to walk home alone at night. Her voice creeps up in volume and pitch. Well, you owe me something now, I say. What do I owe you? A bit of me for a bit of you. Tell me something that no one else knows. She stares at me as if trying to judge how much she should say, then studies her lap. I rub my thumb over her knuckles. I don't know, she says. Feels like I've been faking lately. What do you mean? What have you been faking? She shakes her head. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about my religion. I only know how my family feels about it. And I know I'm supposed to become a doctor and give them grandchildren and all that. It's just a lot, A lot of pressure, I ask? Yeah, but it's not just pressure. There are real consequences for me. I can either choose my family and what they expect of me, or I can choose something else and lose them. They would do that to you? Just drop you? I ask. Maybe not disown me, but close enough. What else would you choose if not staying in the mold of your family? She smirks. Probably run away and join the circus. I'd run away with shit. My cheeks flush at my stutter and I study my Nikes. I'm sorry. Sometimes I get stuck in a word. She squeezes my hand. Were you trying to say you'd run away with me? I'd nod, not trusting my ability to speak with her hand holding mine. Is that a promise? She asks. Yeah, it is. I don't let go of her hand and she doesn't let go of mine. They anchor us together along with everything we've admitted to each other. Noelle Parker is my best friend. Thanks, guys.
Aw, that's so sweet. And I love those conversations that start in one place and then end up somewhere totally different after 6 different trajectories in different directions.
Totally.
Totally felt that. That was awesome. Thank you so much, Anna.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Aurora Ray. Hello, hello.
Hello, Sandy.
Reading from A Convenient Arrangement, which is a duo, both in authorship and in publication. Has a companion piece published with Bella Books. So why don't you tell us a little bit about A Convenient Arrangement, and you can start reading whenever you're ready.
Thank you so much. So as Sandy said, I'm reading from A Convenient Arrangement. It is the story of Jess Archer, who is a digital journalist, among other things, whose boss has given her the task of doing a series. She has a column, and her boss has charged her with kind of getting up close and personal with the cuffing season phenomenon, which is something I only learned about a couple of years ago and found fascinating. And so she is looking for someone to date on a short-term basis so that she can write about it for her column. And she has met Cody Dawson, who is a college professor and single parent who is nearing the end of her tenure process, and she's going up for tenure. And it has been suggested that a couple people in her department would prefer if she were partnered and not just a single parent. They would take her more seriously as an academic. And so they've met a couple of times, and Cody has actually discovered what Jess is after and has called and asked her out on a date. And Jess is deciding what to do about it. So it's a little bit early, but they're coming together under some non-traditional circumstances. So I think a little bit of trust is involved. Jess flopped in her chair. She took out her phone and pulled up the voicemails once more. Her finger hovered over the play icon. There was no point, really. She knew exactly what Cody had and hadn't said. Just a slight shift of her finger to the right, and she tapped the call button. Like Donna said, time was ticking, and she didn't have a lot of options. Cody Dawson. The terse greeting, paired with Cody's sexier than she remembered voice, had her fumbling. Hi, this is Jess Archer from Sophisticate. She waited a beat. And the pineapple costume, and the frantic dash across campus. Cody's laugh managed to put her ease and just a hair more on edge at the same time. The good kind of edge, the kind that came with flirting. Hello, Jess Archer. I got your message. Why was she so nervous? Cody had been awkward as all get out. That should make this easier. So I gathered. And I was wondering if you wanted to get together to talk, she hesitated, about the terms. And my, how did I phrase it? Limiting conditions. Breathe, Jess. Jeez. Yes, those conditions. We definitely need to discuss those. One of them obviously is that I have a kid. I just want to make sure that's not a deal breaker before we go to the trouble of getting together. Donna's words echoed in her mind. Well, less of an echo and more of a flash, complete with red lights and warning bells. It's not, though I'd like to get a clear picture of how much he won't. If this is some temporary thing, I don't want him getting attached. Oh, why did relief feel so much like disappointment? I mean, I'm sure you'll see him, but I'm planning to tell him we're just friends. Okay, yeah, it made sense, and she respected Cody for being protective of him, which made the arrangement a good thing. Sorry, not the most romantic way to set up a first date. Despite the scattered state of her thoughts, not to mention feelings, she laughed. I'm sorry, too. This whole situation is a little strange, to be honest. I mean, not the you part, the cuffing part, and the writing about it part. Cody laughed in return. Thanks, I think. At least they seemed to be on the same page about it being weird. That, weirdly enough, made her feel better. So we should talk more. Right, because you're all about the oral. She groaned. Okay, that was not my finest moment. I like that moment, actually, but I shouldn't poke fun. I promise I won't bring it up every time we see each other. The fact that Cody could poke fun, but it wasn't her only MO, added a few more points to the plus column in her mind. I don't mind some teasing, for the record. Good to know, because I do plan on bringing it up at least every other time. Cody paused, but continued. Are you a yes on Thursday, then? Thursday? I wasn't sure if I should have called it a date. Do we have to work up to that? Or were you just being nice when you said I wasn't part of why this was so weird? The date, right. No, sorry, I lost track of the question. Yes, it's a yes. She grabbed her mouse and toggled to her calendar before Cody could give her something, could have second thoughts. Thursday sounds great. And it technically ever is something to write about in the meantime if things went sideways. Cody cleared her throat. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I was wondering if you'd also be free the following Tuesday. I have a work dinner, and I mean, assuming we decide to go ahead with this, I was wondering if you'd go with me. Even as Cody answered one of the questions in her mind, several moods popped up. Like, what kind of work dinner? And did Cody need a date more specifically than she wanted to go out with Jess? She resisted asking any of them. Some things were better discussed in person. And it wasn't like she was in any position to discuss why Cody might be looking for an atypical dating arrangement. I'll pencil it in. Thank you. Cody seemed relieved, but also genuinely happy with the answer. For Thursday, would you prefer to meet somewhere or should I pick you up? She appreciated that Cody asked her preference. Let's meet. That seems easier. And gives you an out in case you decide I'm a weirdo and want to leave. Are you a weirdo? She was mostly teasing. From what she'd seen so far, Cody was anything but. In fact, Cody had so much going for her that she had quite a bit of wiggle room in the weird department to even rank. It's relative, no? She laughed because it was true, but also because having that awareness was typically a decent insurance policy against being too much of one. Good point. Do you know Mahogany in Capitol Hill? She did. Great food with casual atmosphere. Another point for Cody. Not that she was keeping score. One of my favorites. So Thursday at 6. Perfect. Was it as easy as that? Excellent. We have a date. Apparently it was. I'll see you soon. Looking forward to it. Bye. Bye. She pulled the phone away from her ear and stared at the screen as though it might reveal something more than the list of her recent voicemail. She wasn't quite sure why the interaction left her sort of surprised. Was it because it had gone so smoothly? Or because aside from the kid complication, Cody was shaping up to be a much better fake girlfriend prospect than she'd let herself hope. Wait, correction. temporary, not fake. Anyway, definitely one of those things, because she didn't have lingering reservations about doing this whole thing in the first place, right? Right. Thanks.
I love it. Perfect. I don't know. Is it? I like temporary better than fake. I'm going to agree with that. That's a good choice there. And Cody definitely sounds delicious. So if you would like more, please do check out Aurora and Jamie's book. The link is in the chat roll. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Amy.
Next up, we have Susie Clark. Hi, Susie. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Very good.
Good. Excellent. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your series? Because you're reading from the last book, right? Last book in a series.
Right.
So why don't you give everyone a little bit of context for your series in general, and then you can start reading whenever you're ready.
Okay. Well, the series is Romantic Intrigue. It's about Rachel and Claire, the two main characters. The book takes them all the way through their beginnings of their friendship that they had, how it developed into a really strong friendship, and then into a romance. The different storylines were adventures that they had to go on that they were really didn't volunteer to go on. It was things that they were forced to do and had to work through everything. So the third and final book of the series, called Shadow Dancers, it is right here. The third and final book is called Shadow Dancers, and it is the last of the series. It is I don't want to give a lot about what it's about, obviously, but Rachel and Claire, it's a continuation of Rachel and Claire in the last book. Claire had a shot. She lost her memories, and it was the story of how she was able to get her memory back. This book picks up right hours after she's gotten her memory back about her marriage to Rachel. For a year, she did not know that she was married to Rachel, and Rachel has had to endure that and stand by her, even though Claire did not remember that they were married to each other. And so this particular scene that I've chosen is fairly at the beginning of the book. Rachel and Claire they're in Cleveland. Claire got a hotel in Cleveland so that she could be alone with Rachel and tell her that she's gotten her memory back, that she knows that they were married. And so it's right after they've been together for a few hours and had some great sex, and now they're in bed talking, and this is what happens to them after they've been together and finally have time to talk openly about their situation. Claire tried to remember the times they'd made love, but her memory was foggy and parts were still missing. Did we have sex before we were married? I think we did. Rachel slid her arm over her waist. What do you remember? It was frustrating that Rachel never told her, only hinted, but she understood why she made her work to remember. She breathed deeply, quiet for a long time, not wanting to talk, but to enjoy the shared silence. The interlude brought peace and comfort. In my house here in Cleveland, we were there after the plane crash, said Claire. I'm sure we had sex before. I know because I couldn't keep my hands off you. Rachel's eyes danced as she smiled. We didn't have sex right away, not until after I recovered from my injuries. You left it up to me. We never had sex before that, not in college or anything? No, said Rachel. We wanted to, but never talked about it because we were both insecure and naive. Then we each got married, and it was no longer an option. Claire grasped at the memories as if trying to break through a giant spider web. She divorced her husband, Richard, before Rachel and her husband, Alex, moved here to Cleveland for Rachel's job, and then Alex died in a car accident. Why did we decide to move to Las Vegas and not stay here in Cleveland? Claire asked. We didn't decide right away, said Rachel. I went on an assignment to London with Bryce Chambers from MI6. You ended up at Tilly's in Las Vegas and stayed with her until I got back from... Rachel stopped. What's wrong? Said Claire. Do you remember what happened after that? Claire closed her eyes to concentrate. They were at Tilly's with security guards because of Ishi and Miko. She remembered Rachel's long months of recovery after Jack and the team had brought her back from the Philippines. She smiled and put her hand to Rachel's face and stroked it. We decided to marry after your recovery. We pledged ourselves on the reservation and honeymooned at her teepee. She basked in the memory. It was a wonderful honeymoon. She watched the smile slowly appear on Rachel's face. Rachel took her hand in hers and kissed her diamond wedding ring. Yes, it was wonderful. And then we married at the courthouse when we got back. How did I get so lucky to be married to you? Asked Claire. Rachel leaned over and kissed her. We've wanted to be together all of our adult lives, and we both struggled with it. And we've been through some bad times and bad things. I almost lost you. How did you stand it all this time, being around me and not touching me, waiting for me to get my memory back, but not knowing if it would happen? How on earth did you do it, Rachel? Rachel sighed and touched Claire's face. This past year hasn't been easy. I almost didn't make it through. Rachel sighed and touched Claire's face. Thank you for not giving up and hanging in there with me. If I had remembered and you weren't there, I don't know what I would have done. I would have never left you, Claire, no matter what happened. Claire kissed her, lingering. Sometimes when the memories flooded in, she had a difficult time processing it all. What would her life be like without Rachel? Empty, unfulfilled? She couldn't imagine. The thought of not being with Rachel sent a stabbing ache into her heart. Her life would be nothing without Rachel in it.
Oh, I'm such a sucker for an amnesia story. Definitely one of my favorite tropes. And pillow talk too. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I've already read that one, but now I want to read it all over again.
Thank you.
And start from the beginning of your series. So I put the link for those for the series and for Susie's new release in the chat room if you would like to check it out. Next up, we have Kris Bryant.
Here I am.
Hey, Kris.
Hi.
You are also reading from a new release tonight. Always. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Okay, so it's kind of hard to really describe what this book is, but it's kind of a love story that takes place like over several generations and different countries. So I know that sounds really vague, but basically Perry, the main character, one of the main characters, she decides to open a private investigation firm. And the very first assignment she has is from her great grandmother who had just recently passed. And she, the lawyer or the estate gives her an envelope that has a locket in it that says, "Find her, love, Amma." And so Amma is actually Hildegard. And Perry just has always called her Amma, because it's great grandma. And so she figures out what's happening, and she goes to Italy to find this woman. And she meets Camilla Barnes over there. And Camilla, she's an artist and doesn't want to tell Perry anything because she knows that Perry's looking for her great grandmother. But she doesn't trust her. She doesn't know her. She doesn't know anything about her. So she sends her on this wild goose chase all across the town. So where I'm picking up is chapter 11. And by this time, Perry knows who the woman is. She's met her, and the woman has invited Perry to stay at their villa until she's ready to go back home. And so I am going to pick it up right when a big scene happens. So this is from Perry's point of view. The book alternates point of views between the two characters, Perry and Camilla, and this is actually Perry's chapter, and it's called The First Letter. Surprise! Camilla was standing in the kitchen next to a plate of croissants and jellies. She poured me a cup of coffee and added more cream and sugar than I would have, but it was nice that she remembered how I liked it. I took a sip and hid my grimace at the overly sweet taste, forcing a smile instead. You found somebody to fill in for you. That's great. Camilla always looked refreshed. After sharing a bottle of wine with her last night, I fell into a fitful sleep, waking every hour on the hour until it was hard to ignore the sunshine. I had a lot to do today. I held back a pair of jeans I wore only once, a t-shirt and Converse, but the rest of my suitcase was packed. I had to leave for the airport by 7 tonight. I felt like a walking wreck compared to her. I did. My mother's going to work in my place, so I'm all yours. Camilla cleared her throat as we both maneuvered around that innuendo. I thought we could have, that's great. What did you have in mind? Now my phrasing was just as awkward. What's first on the agenda? I thought we could have breakfast with Bisnona. And in this case, just an FYI, Bisnona is Camilla's great-grandmother, whose real name is Isabel. I thought we could have breakfast with Bisnona, and hopefully she will tell us stories about her and Hildy. I know you're pressed for time, but I want to make sure we have enough time for a quick tour of the winery in the daylight. That sounds great, I said. When Camilla left to get Isabel, I quickly poured out half the coffee and added a splash of water. Good morning, Perry. Isabel slowly shuffled into the kitchen with a smile and a stack of letters held together by a blue ribbon. Her smile warmed my heart. Camilla was right behind her, and hers warmed me in an entirely different way. Good morning, Isabel. How are you feeling? I'm doing well. Did you sleep well? She asked. I'm afraid your tasty wine kept me up most of the night, but no worries. I can sleep on the plane ride home. She slid over the stack of letters. We've all had that problem before. I was hoping you could read these to me, to us. I cleared my throat and took a sip of coffee, forgetting how awful it was. I coughed and swallowed hard. How could it be worse? Camilla opened the refrigerator and handed me a Pellegrino. I wasn't fond of sparkling water, but gladly accepted it. After a refreshing pull from the bottle, I carefully tugged the ribbon open and ran my fingertips over the stack of letters. I recognized the handwriting. My Emma wrote these letters decades ago. A wave of sadness washed over me as I realized I never knew this side of her, that her relationship was never recognized. How easy life was for me. I swallowed the lump in my throat and blinked back tears. Would you like me to read the first letter? Camilla asked. I nodded and handed her the first letter. Her fingertips brushed my palm as she took it from my hand, and I ignored the thickening of my pulse and the warmth of the connection. Camilla pulled the tissue-thin paper from the envelope. Are you sure? Isabel reached for my hand and nodded. I grasped hers with the same conviction. It's time for my family to know. My free hand went up to my throat as my anxiety kicked up a notch when Camilla unfolded the letter. My dearest Isabel, do you remember the night we sneaked into the olive grove when it was just us under the biggest tree? A soft breeze rustled the small leaves around us, and we thought your brother had followed us, but no, it was just us. You pressed me up against the tree to hide me. You said the moonlight made my hair glow and my eyes sparkled with something you couldn't quite identify. It was love, Izzy. In that moment, I knew I loved you. Our first kiss was the most amazing feeling of my life. I knew it was going to happen that night. I thought I was scared, but the moment I felt your lips on my cheek move down to my mouth, I knew it was meant to be. We were meant to be. It will forever be, in the history of my life, my favorite first kiss. Camilla stopped, I imagined, to watch how Isabel and I reacted. The lump in my throat grew, and I swallowed hard twice. Isabel dabbed her eyes. I squeezed her hand a little harder. Coming out was never easy, and at 96, it had to be the hardest thing she's done, aside from walking away from the relationship with Hildy. Bisnona, she sounded wonderful. How romantic. Do you remember this first kiss? How could I ever forget something so powerful? Even though my mind isn't as sharp as it once was, my heart will always remember it. That's beautiful, Isabel, I said. I was overcome with such a rush of sadness and an overwhelming need to feel something that strong. I hadn't been that much in love and felt things so deeply yet, even though I foolishly thought I had been in love before. Shall I continue? Camilla asked. She held it out to me. Or would you like to read? She was truly being sincere, and although they were Emma's words, hearing them aloud seemed so personal and private. Oh, please continue. Camilla nodded and picked up where she left off. Being so far away from you is hard. Everywhere I go, something reminds me of you. Oh, Izzy would love this bakery, or would love to dance to the song on the radio, or even take a walk with me in the fall. He would love Connecticut right now. The leaves are changing, and even though the sky is gray, the trees light up the sky with yellow and orange leaves that twirl like small fires on branches. It's cold outside, but everything seems softer and easier with you in my heart. I hate that you are so far away from me, my love, but what can we do? I can feel your love for me even though an ocean separates us. Please know that even though you are so far away, you are still close to me. You are so close to me that sometimes thinking about you takes my breath away. Always, Hildy. None of us spoke while we let Emma's words sink in. Camilla poured Isabel tea, and I sipped my sparkling water. So many things flashed in my mind. The definition of true love, beauty during a war, a love that could never happen. They must have been torn inside. Isabel, what would have happened if you and Hildy were caught? Isabel wiped her nose on her handkerchief that she pulled out from under her sleeve. The gesture made me smile because Emma did that too. We would have been kicked out of our families and worse. Honestly, Hildy and I didn't think it could ever be real between us and couldn't last. I didn't know a single gay person, not until much later in life. And by then we were both too old and too embedded in our lives to do anything about it. I wanted to be angry at them for giving up and walking away from such a deep love, but I had to remember that it wasn't that long ago that LGBTQ people were given basic rights like marriage and the ability to adopt children, although even Italy still didn't allow those freedoms. When was the last time you and Hildy communicated? I hated that I didn't know if they had phones in the 1940s or could even call overseas. I was going to Google that later. The last letter I ever received from Hildy was on her wedding day. My heart broke right there in Italy at 10:16 in the morning. I wanted to fall to the floor and cry for such romantic injustice and to weep for a love that never had a chance. I looked at Camilla and her expression told me she felt the same.
Oh, it's like I was gonna say it's like a romance within a romance, but it's kind of a sad romance, but still a romance. I don't know. I still feel it.
Yeah, it has a lot of feeling. This book has a lot of different emotions, and there's always good and there's always hard, but it's still good. It's still good. It's still a happily ever after ending book. And there are lots of tears, so be ready for it.
All right, get your Kleenex ready. Be prepared. Thank you, Kris.
Thanks.
Last but certainly not least, we have Ann Shade. Here she is. Hi, Ann.
Hi.
Ann, you're reading from Love and Lotus Blossoms, which has received some amazing feedback so far. Publishers Weekly Best Book of 2021. We're so excited for you. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about it and start reading?
All right. I'll be reading from Love and Lotus Blossoms. This was my fall release. And the story is about Janess Phillips, who has, it's kind of like a coming of age story. And this section, she's about 18, her and her best friends. She has two best friends, Nikki and Justin, have just graduated from high school, and they've gone away for the weekend to the shore, to the Jersey Shore, to spend the week, just the three of them, just to hang out before they all go off to college and start their lives. And some trust is being kind of played with in the fact that she's finding out that one of her best friends, Justin, has pretty much been in love with her for a long time, for most of their friendship. They've all been friends since they were for the past 4 years or so. And this is the scene where she's trying to talk to him and deal with it, as well as their friend Nikki trying to help kind of keep the peace between all of them. I cared too much about Justin to lie to him, but I also didn't want to hurt him. You weren't imagining it. When a cocky grin began to appear, I raised my hand to cut off any thoughts he was having. But it was only physical attraction, Justin. I value our friendship too much to act on something that isn't going to go anywhere. So you are attracted to me, he said, undeterred. I threw my hands up in frustration. Did you not hear the rest of what I said? He took my hand. I heard you, and I also value our friendship. Why can't that attraction and friendship turn to something more? My grandparents started out as friends. They've been married for 75 years, he said proudly. I looked at Justin, thought about our friendship, and tried to imagine being married to him. at all, if for that long. And the thought scared the hell out of me. Not because of him personally. He was a sweet, easygoing, caring guy under all that cockiness, and I did love him. But the problem lay with him being a him. While most girls my age were dreaming of one day meeting Michael Jackson and falling in love, I dreamed of his sister Janet. I slid my hand from Justin's. Justin, I don't see it that way. Justin looked at his empty hand and back at me with disappointment. So that's it. You meet Maya and you no longer like guys. I didn't say that. How could I explain to him when I didn't understand myself? So it's just this guy. I didn't say that either. Justin shook his head. You're not saying much of anything, Ness. He got up and walked down to where Nikki stood in hip-deep waves. I self-consciously wondered if I was the topic of their conversation, if Justin poured his heart out to Nikki the way I did. Nikki had brought our little trio together and seemed to be the glue keeping us from unraveling. But would it be enough if I kept hurting Justin's feelings? Justin smiled at something over Nikki's shoulder, and I turned to see what he was looking at, a woman standing nearby. The woman boldly smiled back at him, and Justin winked at her. He said something to Nikki, then made his way over to the other woman while Nikki walked back toward me. I looked back toward Justin, and I recognized his player face and saw the woman giving it right back to him. I turned away to find Nikki watching me curiously. What? I asked in annoyance. Nikki shook her head and sat beside me. Nothing. Justin and I were talking about grabbing something to eat. You ready to go? Yeah. Is he? Seems a little busy. I ignored the sting of hurt to my pride as I wondered how he could be asking me about being more than friends one minute and pushing up on some other chick the next. Look, Janess, it's probably not my place to say this, especially since both of you are my friends, but until you tell Justin outright that you don't want to be more than friends, you're going to keep hurting him. That, she said, indicating Justin flirting with the other woman, is his way of dealing with it. I told him I value our friendship and that just because we have a physical attraction for each other doesn't mean we have to act on it. Nikki frowned at me. That was a cowardly explanation, especially since you know his feelings are more than physical. I looked down at my lap in shame. I know, but I can't explain it to him the way I need to. Everything I say will either be weak or a lie. Then lie to him. Take him out of his misery, unless you do have feelings for him. I threw my head back. I don't know, I groaned out. Nikki chuckled. Do you like the boy or not? Of course I like him. He's my friend, but I also think he's hot, and it's weird to think a friend is hot. Nikki quirked a brow. You used to think I was hot. I threw my shorts at her. I got over that. Damn, that hurt, she said playfully. Seriously, Nikki, what am I going to do? I really do like Maya and want to keep seeing her, but it seems like every time I get around a half-dressed Justin, my body has a mind of its own. With Maya, is it more emotional attraction or physical? Nikki asked. I thought about how comfortable and free I felt around Maya, how the anticipation of going all the way with her was killing me. Both. Have you guys had sex yet? I would have told you if we had. Nikki shrugged. Hey, I don't expect you to tell me every time you get your freak on with someone. You could at least expect to hear about the major ones. I frowned. Maya said we should wait until I'm sure. I keep telling her I am, but I don't think she means when I'm sure if I want to have sex. Probably not. She wants to be sure you're not one of those chicks that bounces back and forth because you're too scared to come out or simply curious. I'm not curious. I really do like girls. Yeah, but you also have no problem liking guys either. Some lesbians may find dating a bisexual chick, but most prefer not to be a pastime until the right guy comes along. It's not like that with me. You sure about that? You fooled around with a couple of chicks from your squad until Dante came along. Then you pretty much kicked them to the curb. You got tired of Dante and ended up with Maya. Now you're faced with feelings you had for Justin, but won't admit to. You're my girl and I love you, but I gotta be honest. I think you're too confused about your sexuality to be trying to get serious with someone like Maya. It's obvious she's not into playing games and trying to be in this with you on a serious level. She's out, she's hot, and she's got her head on straight. She could have any chick she wants, and she chose you, Janess. You better be damn sure you want to choose her. I looked over toward Justin. He and the woman were still talking. She reached up, slid a hand down his bicep, and licked her lips seductively. I quickly turned away. A moment later, Justin jogged over, squat down before us. Ready for some food? I'm starving. When are you not starving? Nikki asked. Justin grinned. I've got a date tonight. I need sustenance to keep my strength up. Tonight? You just met the girl. I hope that didn't sound as petty as it felt. Justin narrowed his gaze at me. You sound almost jealous, which couldn't be the case since we're just friends. I sat up and shoved him so he fell on his ass with a oof, then shoved my stuff into my bag. I'm going to rinse my feet off. I'll meet you guys up there. You can be such an asshole, I heard Nikki say as I stomped away.
Oh man, give me some friends who give it to you like it is. There's so much real in that. I was nodding along like, yep, you tell her. You tell her. I love it. Thank you so much, Anne. That was amazing. Link to Love and Lotus Blossoms is in the chat roll and on sale tonight if you would like to pick it up. All right, if everyone can jump back on, we do have a couple of minutes for questions. If you have a question for any of our panelists, please do pop it in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And while we wait for those, I do have a question for our panel. And the question is, what role do truth and lies play in your novels? Do your characters ever lie to each other? Do they ever betray the trust of the love interest? Why don't we start with Anna?
Oh man, I think I've only written 2 so far. I think most of the lying comes like my main character is lying to themselves a lot. And I think that's probably universal through a lot of these books is like you have to overcome something that like you're lying to yourself about to access the great love at the end, you know? So I think there's a lot of like self-lying, and then maybe I'll write my next one where there are some other lies going on though.
Oh, there we go, generating some ideas here.
Yeah, got my little pad over here.
Aurora, how about you? Do your characters ever lie?
I mean, sometimes, but Anna totally stole my answer. No, I mean, I think characters are often, I think in a romance, lying can be tricky because if there's a real breach of trust, it's really hard to overcome that, especially sort of in the timeline that you're typically writing a romance. I think withholding the truth, I think some people call that a lie, some wouldn't, but I think Anna's right that sort of lying to yourself about your feelings, about who you are and what you want and how you kind of move through the world and what's really going to make you happy. Like that's the real meat and heart of a good story, and especially a romance.
Yeah, for sure. Susie, how about you? Especially writing an intrigue, do your characters ever lie?
Yeah. You know, I love what Aurora said about withholding the truth. And sometimes my characters have, and they have really good reasons why they did it. I mean, they can justify it right with the best of everybody why they did. And it's caused this last, and Shadow Dancers, the last of the series. Rachel has withheld some things from Claire, and it really starts to rip them apart. And so it's just part of intrigue. It's just something that I'd like to know who of us has not lied at one point or another about relationships. Come on.
Oh, I'm not going to put our authors on the hot seat. This is about the books, but maybe that's a question for later. Kris, how about you? Do your characters ever lie, ever withhold the truth? Is there a difference?
There is a difference, and I've written characters that have done both. I have written a character who flat out lied in Scent, but she was doing it, she thought was for a good reason. You know, she is kind of a wealthy person, and she wanted to play the poor, struggling artist so that she knew that the person who was interested in her wasn't after her for her money. So she just kind of used her artist persona during the relationship. And then when it was time, she just couldn't find the right time to come out and say, look, I'm really this person. So that was a big lie. And then there's also withholding the truth, which I believe is different. I like the way Aurora said that. So kudos, good job. I like that. And listen, when my character had her nervous breakdown, and then came back as a different person. So as an adult, as a different person. So, I mean, we can't just all say everything at once, especially the characters can't say everything at once about themselves to the other characters. So it's like little stages and steps to get to know somebody. And maybe you're not completely honest the whole time. Like, yeah, I have a great relationship with my parents, but really you don't, it just kind of, I mean, I really do, but I'm just saying characters in general. It's one of those where you just can't do an info dump. And so it's a gradual process with any relationship on the page or in real life.
I like that. Awesome. Anne, how about you? Have your characters ever lied? I don't know. I feel like from your reading, your characters are really, really quite upfront, but
they, especially with this story, she's withheld, like as you find out further on the story, she withholds some information. So she doesn't exactly lie, but she also doesn't tell all of her story at certain points. But then there's the lying to herself that she does a lot of, with her confusion about her sexuality and her attractions towards her best friend and also this her love interest. So there's a little bit of, I guess, lying, but I think it's an unaware of lying.
Awesome. All right. And CA, how about you? Have your characters ever lied?
I can't imagine writing a character that would lie about to each other, to their love interest. Maybe lying to herself about how she feels or how she thinks maybe the other character feels, but no, I don't think so. I don't even like the idea of it. So no, probably I wouldn't.
All right. That's a definite no from CA. All right, I think we have time for one more question. And that is, how do your characters earn the trust of the love interest? What are some traits or behaviors that make somebody trustworthy? Aurora?
I'm going to go full Brene Brown on this one and say vulnerability.
Yes.
I think when you're vulnerable and you show your kind of soft, squishy underside, then it lets people feel like they can do the same.
I like that answer. Susie, how about you?
I think in my case, for the romantic intrigues that I've written, I'd have to say consistency. They are consistently with each other. They consistently stay with each other no matter what happens. I'd have to say consistency is really what binds them together.
I love that. Got some vulnerability and some consistency. And how about you? What makes someone trustworthy?
I say being open and honest, or as honest as, needed to be. There are sometimes where if you know something's going to hurt someone, if you're being too honest or too brutally honest, then you kind of hold back a little. But I think just being open leads to trust.
Awesome. Cool. CA, how about you? What is it that makes somebody trustworthy?
I think what Anne was just saying, to be honest and straightforward with them and, not going behind their back or doing anything that you wouldn't, doing anything to them you wouldn't want them to do to you. I guess I'll put it that way. So honesty, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Kris, what is it that makes somebody trustworthy?
Absolutely everything that everybody has said already. I don't think I can add anything different, new to the answer.
Okay. Anna, the pressure's on. You got anything different or new?
I much preferred going first. Big echo to everything everyone said. Definitely vulnerability. Like in my reading, it's kind of like I give you something that's hard to share. I trust you with that. And in turn, you trust me with something of you. And I feel like all romance is really just like that scaffolding of these little bits of trust building on each other. And a little give from each party just keeps on building that up.
Yeah.
I reckon.
For sure. It's like what you had in your reading where you said, do you think that you could really love someone if you knew everything about them? So maybe it's that you show who you really are and they love you anyway.
Yeah, totally.
Awesome. Thank you all so much and have a great night.
I
Good night.
Thank you. Thank you.